Have you scanned your car and found a P0340 code? Like many drivers, your first instinct might be to replace the camshaft position sensor. But what if the code comes back? Or worse, the engine still runs poorly, struggles to start, or even stalls after you've already installed a brand new sensor? Here's the problem. A P0340 code doesn't automatically mean the camshaft position sensor is bad. In fact, replacing the sensor is one of the most common mistakes people make, and one of the biggest reasons they end up wasting money on unnecessary parts. The good news is that the real cause is often something you can identify before replacing another sensor. In this video, I'll explain what the P0340 code actually means, why replacing the camshaft position sensor doesn't always fix the problem, and the most important things you should check before spending more money on parts you may not need. What P0340 really means. Before checking the camshaft position sensor, it's important to understand what the P0340 code is actually telling you. Many people see a P0340 code and immediately assume the camshaft position sensor has failed. But that's not what the code says. A P0340 code means the ECU has detected a problem in the camshaft position sensor circuit. And that one word, circuit, is extremely important. The circuit includes much more than just the sensor itself. It also includes the wiring, the connector, the power and ground circuits, and in some cases, even the engine's mechanical timing. If any part of that system fails, the ECU may no longer receive a reliable camshaft position signal and can set a P0340 code. That's why replacing the sensor doesn't always solve the problem. The real cause may be somewhere else in the system. So before spending money on another sensor, let's start with the first thing you should always inspect. First thing to check: wiring. Before replacing the camshaft position sensor, ask yourself one simple question. Has any work recently been done around the engine? If so, the wiring should be one of the first things you inspect. During engine repairs, the wiring harness can easily be stretched, pinched, routed too close to hot components, or accidentally damaged without anyone noticing. Even if the damage isn't visible, a broken wire or poor connection inside the harness can interrupt the signal between the camshaft position sensor and the ECU. When that happens, the ECU may detect an unreliable camshaft position signal and set a P0340 code, even though the sensor itself is working properly. That's why replacing the sensor before checking the wiring often leads to the same code coming back. Take a few minutes to inspect the wiring harness carefully. Look for damaged insulation, exposed wires, corrosion, or areas where the harness may have been rubbing against metal engine components. If the wiring checks out, don't replace another sensor just yet. There's another much smaller component that can trigger the same P0340 code far more often than many people realize. Next, inspect the connector. If the wiring looks good, don't assume the sensor is the next thing to replace. Instead, take a close look at the connector. Here's why. A connector can appear to be fully plugged in, yet still fail to transmit a reliable signal to the ECU. In some cases, simply unplugging and reconnecting the connector can temporarily change the symptoms. The engine may start, idle differently, or the P0340 code may disappear for a short time before returning. That's a strong clue that the problem may be the connection, not the sensor itself. Over time, heat, moisture, engine vibration, and previous repairs can damage the terminals inside the connector. A loose terminal, corrosion, or a pin that's been pushed back can interrupt the camshaft sensor signal, even though everything looks normal from the outside. That's why it's worth inspecting the connector closely. Look for corrosion, bent or loose terminals, oil contamination, damaged locking tabs, or anything that could prevent a solid electrical connection. Replacing the sensor won't solve the problem if the connector can't deliver a stable signal. But if both the wiring and the connector are in good condition, it's time to ask another important question. Is the camshaft position sensor actually the correct one for your vehicle? Check if the correct camshaft position sensor is installed. If the wiring and connector both check out, don't rush to replace the camshaft position sensor again. Instead, ask yourself one important question. Has the correct sensor actually been installed? Some drivers choose a cheaper replacement sensor simply because it fits perfectly and uses the same connector, without realizing that the wrong sensor can still trigger the same P0340 code. In many cases, replacement sensors look almost identical to the original and install without any problems. But that doesn't always mean they're the correct sensor for your vehicle. If the P0340 code appeared immediately after replacing the sensor, or if the symptoms never changed at all, that's a good reason to verify the replacement part before assuming the new sensor is defective. Even a small difference in the sensor's signal characteristics or internal electronics can prevent the ECU from recognizing the camshaft position correctly. As a result, the P0340 code may continue to return, even though a brand new sensor has been installed. That's why it's important to verify the part number, compare the replacement sensor with the original one whenever possible, and choose a high-quality replacement part that matches your vehicle's specifications. A new sensor isn't always the right sensor, but if you're certain the correct sensor is installed, and the P0340 code still keeps coming back, it's time to look beyond the electrical system and consider another possible cause. Don't overlook engine timing. If the wiring is good, the connector is clean, and you've confirmed that the correct camshaft position sensor is installed, there's one more important area that should never be overlooked: the engine's mechanical timing. Many people don't realize that a P0340 code isn't always caused by an electrical problem. The camshaft position sensor doesn't control engine timing. It simply reports the camshaft's position to the ECU. If the timing chain or timing belt has stretched or skipped a tooth, the camshaft may no longer be synchronized with the crankshaft. When that happens, the camshaft may no longer be where the ECU expects it to be. As a result, the ECU can detect an abnormal camshaft position signal and set a P0340 code, even though the sensor itself is working exactly as it should. Depending on the vehicle, you may also notice symptoms such as hard starting, rough idle, poor engine performance, misfires, or a check engine light that keeps returning after replacing the sensor. That's why replacing the camshaft position sensor alone won't solve the problem if the engine timing itself is incorrect. If every mechanical and electrical component checks out, there's one final possibility that's much less common, but still worth considering. Consider a PCM or circuit fault. If you've inspected the wiring, checked the connector, verified the correct camshaft position sensor, and confirmed the engine timing is correct, there's one final possibility to consider. Although it's far less common, the problem could be within the ECU itself, or another part of the camshaft sensor circuit. A damaged ECU, an internal circuit fault, or a problem with the sensor's power or ground circuit can all prevent the ECU from receiving a reliable camshaft position signal. When that happens, a P0340 code may continue to return, even though every major component appears to be working properly. Fortunately, these types of failures are much less common than wiring problems, connector issues, incorrect sensors, or timing-related faults. That's why they should only be considered after the more common causes have been thoroughly checked. By diagnosing the system in the right order, you can avoid unnecessary parts replacement, save money, and identify the real cause of the P0340 code much more efficiently. Diagnostic Summary. If your scan tool shows a P0340 code, don't assume the camshaft position sensor is the problem. Start by understanding what the code actually means. A P0340 code indicates a fault somewhere in the camshaft position sensor circuit, not necessarily a failed sensor. Begin by inspecting the wiring harness for damaged, broken, or corroded wires. Next, check the connector for loose terminals. corrosion, oil contamination, or poor electrical contact. Then verify that the correct camshaft position sensor is installed and that it matches your vehicle's specifications. If everything electrical checks out, inspect the engine's mechanical timing. A stretched timing chain, a slipped timing belt, or incorrect camshaft timing can also trigger a P0340 code. Finally, if all of these components have been properly tested, consider the possibility of a PCM or circuit-related fault. Following this diagnostic process can help you identify the real cause of a P0340 code while avoiding unnecessary parts replacement. A P0340 code doesn't automatically mean the camshaft position sensor has failed. It simply tells you that the ECU has detected a problem somewhere in the camshaft position sensor circuit. That's why replacing the sensor should never be your first step. By checking the wiring, connector, sensor, engine timing, and the rest of the circuit in the proper order, you'll have a much better chance of finding the real problem while avoiding unnecessary repairs and wasted money. The most important thing to remember is this: a P0340 code tells you where to start your diagnosis, not which part to replace. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment below, and subscribe to the channel for more automotive diagnostics and troubleshooting videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.